Hi, welcome to Yoke's YouTube channel. I'm Liz Matthew, the regulated Canadian immigration consultant. Thanks for tuning in. Today, we will be looking at the Ontario's new stream, the Ontario Workforce Priority Stream. So, what is it all about? Who is eligible? And what you need to watch out for. This is something that we will be discussing in this video. And if you are someone who is looking for Canadian PR and you are inside Canada checking out what are your options, this is a video that you got to watch till the end. Please do let us know if you do have any kind of inquiries. We are happy to help you out. So let's dive into the video. So what is this stream? Basically, the Ontario Workforce Priority Stream is one of Ontario's new employer-driven immigration streams under the Ontario Immigrant Nominee Program. It basically replaces the previous employer job offer streams with one streamlined program, and the stream allows eligible foreign workers who qualifies with an Ontario job offer to be nominated for permanent residence. So the earlier employer job offer streams in the 8 different streams have been completely cancelled out. They have withdrawn people who have already submitted their expression of interest through that particular streams, and Ontario is planning to bring about this program shortly, and we are waiting for it to open. This new stream is basically redesigned its employer-driven immigration system to simplify the application process, to look at labor shortages, to better align immigration with Ontario's workforce needs, and to modernize the expression of interest and create a streamlined pathway for employers, as well as there were so many pathways, so many streams in the previous OINP employer-driven pathway. So the 3 pathways that is for this new Ontario workforce stream is the tier 0, 1, 2, 3 pathway. That's for workers in professional streams, professional occupations, technical skills, and management. And the tier 4, 5 pathway is for workers in eligible intermediate and labor occupations. And the 3rd pathway is the self-employed physician pathway, which is designed for eligible physicians practicing in Ontario. And before you can apply, there are criteria for the employer and there are criteria for the candidates. So what are those? For the applicant, they must have a full-time job offer from an eligible Ontario employer. As I told you, there is employer has requirements to meet as well. We'll be looking at what that requirement is, and the required work experience is a requirement, and there is a requirement for language proficiency and education. Legal status is also important when applying from within Canada and intention to live in Ontario. Meeting this criteria alone doesn't guarantee you an invitation. So that is something that you got to watch out for. So there are different required work experience. So someone who is a recent graduate, you need to have 3 months of work experience in the last 12 months with the employer that's offering you the employment. And also for someone who is not a recent graduate, you need to have 6 months of work experience in the last 12 months with the employer that's offering you the employment job offer. And you also need to meet the median wage for someone who is not a part of the recent graduate and in that particular city that you are located whoever is working in a particular city, they need to meet the median wage for someone who is not a recent graduate. That is also a requirement in there. In terms of job offer, must be permanent full-time, and it must be in an eligible occupation under the applicable pathway, say like tier 0, 1, 2, 3 or tier 4, 5. So if you are someone who has a tier 4, 5 pathway job, you got to have 9 months of work experience. That is a requirement that you need to meet, and the median wage for that particular NOC code in the region that you are employed. And be necessary to the employer's business. It is very important your particular occupation, the job offer that you have received, is essential for the employer to run that business and be offered by an eligible Ontario employer. So let's look at what are the employer's requirement. Employer's requirement is that they need to be operating on an active business in Ontario for at least 3 years. They need to meet minimum business requirements, which is in the GTA 1 million annual revenue, and outside GTA the 500,000 annual revenue, and meeting minimum employee requirements. If the employer is within GTA, they need to have 5 Canadian citizens or permanent residents working, or someone who is outside GTA. The employer is outside GTA, you just need to have employees, say like 3 full-time Canadian citizens or PR, and they need to have 500,000 annual revenue. So demonstrating a genuine need for the position and completing the required employer documentation is also important. And the applicant's requirement, as we discussed earlier, needs to be your education, work experience, your education, and your licensing requirements if you are working in licensed profession, and maintain legal status, and requirements vary depending on the pathway. And understanding work experience is also important. There are recent graduate streams, someone who is outside that and who have a long-term cumulative work experience need to have 6 months of work experience in the last 12 months in that particular job offer that's being offered to them. So language requirement, applicants must demonstrate language ability by taking an approved English or French language test. The approved English language test is a CELPIP General, IELTS General or PTE Core, and the French approved language test is the TEF or the TCF. And someone who has both bilingual knowledge of English and French, they do get additional points. So that's something that if you are someone who has knowledge of both languages, you will get additional points. And educational requirements. So some pathways require secondary school completion, and if you are someone who studied outside of Canada and you have a higher education completed outside Canada, you need to do an educational credential assessment for your foreign education in order to get your Canadian equivalency. So please go ahead and do that before you submit your expression of interest, so you are not being stressed out in the end later when you receive an invitation. And what is this recent Ontario graduate? Who does come under that? So applicants who graduated from an eligible Ontario institution within the last 3 years. And they need to have completed that in the eligible Ontario institutions. Not all institutions come under the eligibility, and they need to have completed only these specific programs. Then they can apply under the recent Ontario graduate. Either a post-secondary degree or diploma, at least 2 years, an Ontario college graduate certificate only. It's very important to note that you have particularly completed this particular certificate. If you are someone who have done an Ontario college certificate, unfortunately you are not eligible under the recent Ontario graduate streams. Or someone who did a master's degree or a PhD degree, then yes, you can be eligible under the recent Ontario graduate, provided you meet all the other conditions like employer requirements, and so on. So regulated occupations, what are those? Certain occupations in Ontario, they are licensed and registrations are required, and you need authorization to practice in Ontario. So if you are someone receiving just a provincial nomination does not replace your licensing requirements, yes, that is required. The expression of interest scoring basically works. For OINP, for workforce priority stream, they have their scores based on factors such as the education factor, language ability factor, work experience, occupations, wage offered. So say if you are between 20 to 25, you will be getting this many points. Anything about that, this many points. So like there is range bracket, and someone who has an Ontario work experience will also get additional points. And if you are employed in a specific region in Ontario, you have more points compared to someone who is working in Toronto. And your labor market priorities also gives you additional points, and they will be conducting their draws and opening up the stream sometime soon, later in summer 2026. That's what OINP has said, and we are waiting to hear from them. And after you receive an invitation, you basically submit all your complete application and your application fee and your documents, and respond promptly, as there's only 14 calendar days for the employer to respond and 17 calendar days for the applicant to respond. And the provincial nomination. So if your application is approved, Ontario will issue a nomination. You can then apply to IRCC for permanent residence through the appropriate process. And a provincial nomination is not the same as permanent residence. The final decision is made by IRCC. In the OINP workforce priority stream, there is an option. Do you want to go ahead and apply through express entry once you receive the nomination, or you can decide even to apply for OINP directly through the non-express entry route. This is something that you should decide on, as the processing times for both could vary from during the time that you actually submit your application. So what are some of the common refusal reasons? Is your NOC code doesn't match, your employer is ineligible, and your language results are not meeting the requirements, your insufficient work experience, inconsistent information. These are all some of the common reasons of refusal. So before you decide to go ahead and submit your expression of interest, please do make sure that you're really eligible for the program, because you don't want to go through this whole process of waiting and finally you receive an invitation and you get to know that, hey, you're not eligible. So that's very disappointing. Please do reach out to us if you are someone who is looking for immigration advice. We will be happy to help you out, and our contact details are on the screen. Reach out to us and we can help you out. Thank you all for tuning in. See you all in the next video.